Hey, we're going to continue our comparison of the 2038R and the LX3310, and I brought my expert friend, Ken.
Thank you. I think.
Along for today. What we're going to do is we're going to test the hydraulic flows of both of these units. We're going to test at the Power Beyond, and we're going to test front loader. I don't have the third function installed on this machine yet, so we're not going to be able to install that or test that. But we'll test the flow at several other points. Hey Ken, I've got one thing that I just want to say. I already like the Kubota better in this particular area.
Yeah?
I can actually read the model number with the loader on.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting
You notice
point.
that almost no John Deere compact tractor can you read the model number.
That's right. You have to go up and look at it. Yeah, you don't know. Absolutely. Yeah.
So 1 point Kubota. Let's get started. Hey Ken, when we do these tests for the flow, does the maximum pressure, we set these pressure relief valves, they're configurable on each machine. Does that make any difference to our flow?
It does not. It does in respect if we choke the flow down all the way, the pressure's going to rise. But at that point, we have no flow to do work anyway. We don't operate up against that relief valve. We don't operate the machines that way. They wouldn't function that way. We would overheat the fluid. So in real life, no, it doesn't. They don't have a direct relationship together.
Yeah, if you have any questions about flow and pressure and how they relate, we did an episode recently where we did some basic tractor hydraulics.
Yep.
We talked about flow and pressure, how they related. We talked about, in general, how the oil flows through the system. Some of the things we'll talk about today may refer back to that episode. We'll put a card to it right up here if your device supports it. Try to put a link in the description too.
Yep.
Ken, is it fair to say that testing at the Power Beyond is really kind of the best way to test the overall implement flow?
I think it is because we have the least amount of restrictions in the system at this point, other than the two couplers, which are already in the system anyway. When you have the Power Beyond connected, we're not going through anything else. So I think this is the easiest way to make sure we're in spec.
Okay, and so when this number should be in line with the spec implement flow.
Yes.
When they state that.
Yep.
So for this tractor, it's supposed to be 5.3 gallons per minute.
Okay. Well, let me explain how I've built the gauge. Just give a quick rundown on how we built the gauge, so we're fair in the testing. So we used the largest couplers we could use on each machine, in this case 1/2 inch. We've used 3/8 hoses. We've used all larger fittings, so we're not choking down any of the flow with the gauge. When we check the loader pressure, we'll still have these larger fittings, the larger hoses. The only restriction we will have is the 1/4 inch couplers, but that's the same couplers that the loader uses. So we're not adding any restriction into the system with the flow gauge. So if we do get a false reading, we shouldn't be creating that from the gauge.
Okay. Our gauge can test temperature.
Yes.
And it can test the flow.
Correct.
And then we can adjust the pressure to essentially restrict it a little bit and make it work harder.
Right, to simulate doing work. Right, we can load the system with that loading valve to simulate doing work, yes.
Okay.
And we can monitor the pressure at that same time.
Let's do the Power Beyond on both tractors, because that should be the closest to complete implement flow without any other restrictions.
Right, exactly. So we already have the gauge plugged in. We have the pressure line from the tractor going into the gauge, going out of the gauge, and we're returning back into the R fitting, the return, which puts the 3-point hitch back in the circuit. 1.5 or so?
We're seeing 1.5 at idle.
Maybe 1.5, 1 3/4 at idle, yes sir.
Let's just go straight to wide open throttle.
Okay. 5 gallons a minute.
5 gallons a minute. We're about 110 degrees, it looks like. Yeah, it looks right at 5. So I don't know that I would be able to tell 5 from 5.3 anyway.
Right, exactly.
Let's crank a little bit of pressure to it just to see.
1,000 pounds, haven't really affected our flow at all.
No impact yet.
About 1,500, very little impact. 2,500, very little impact. That's surprising.
Okay. About 2,900 is the set.
Yeah.
Hey, when we were running the offset flail mower, we showed that in an episode, and we had a commenter that said that our right lift arm was bent. And I insisted with him that it wasn't. I said, no, nothing's bent, nothing's bent. And he was certain that he saw a bend. Well, he was right. You guys are eagle eyes in these videos. So this has bent here, and I believe that must have happened with the offset flail mower. I'm assuming that the extra weight of that offset flail being extended way out there at some point has caused that. Not good at all. I'll have to get that fixed. I was really happy with this thing too. I liked this ratcheting adjustment, but if it's not strong enough to handle the attachments we have, then that's bad news. Okay, so idle, power beyond.
Yes.
About 2 gallons per minute, I believe.
Right, so out of this tractor we have a dealer installed Power Beyond kit.
That's an interesting point. I want to interrupt you right here, Ken. Kubota doesn't make, at least to our knowledge, Kubota doesn't make a Power Beyond kit for the tractor. The dealer has to create it.
That's my belief too. This is a dealer installed kit, dealer configured kit. It's basically just 2 hoses and 2 couplers. So we have our loop here. We've got out of the tractor, a female coupler. This is the out coupler, just like on the Deere was. Going into the gauge, coming out of the gauge, back to our system. So that's our loop, that's our Power Beyond. What do we have for a measurement, Tim?
Temperature's about 100 now, so
Okay.
it's probably not as warm as we had the other one.
Well, we'll warm it up. We'll load it up some. We'll
It's
increase
reading
the throttle.
about 2 gallons per minute, I believe.
Yep, I agree.
I'll just run her wide open now and see what we get.
Say 4.5.
Yeah, I would say 4.5 is what we're seeing.
gallons a minute.
Let's add some pressure and see if it decreases any. Oh, we can hear a whistle.
1,000 pounds. That's hauling right around 4 gallons a minute. 2,000. That's
Just a little more than 4 still.
pretty good.
And there it drops off.
Yeah, it
So,
starts to drop off considerably after 2,000 RPM.
so the relief must be set somewhere around 2,200.
Yeah. We'll definitely warm it up too. Interesting to see how quickly the fluid will warm up once we start applying the load to the system.
Ken, we've tested 3 tractors here now, 2 in this episode. We tested the 1025R in another episode.
Yep.
Each of the 3 of them have shown slightly less than the spec.
Yes. Correct.
So in this case, we saw a good strong 5 gallons per minute. It's
Right.
rated at 5.3.
Right. Whether we can discern 3/10 or not, it's iffy, but
I think we could have told 3/10, but I
Yeah.
don't think we could tell 1/10.
Right.
I mean, it's just too close for that.
I agree.
Over here, I would say we saw 4.5, maybe 4.6. Again,
Right.
1/10 we can't
Right.
tell.
And it's rated for 5 gallons a minute.
So it's a little bit low too.
Yeah.
Really, kind of, we've seen both of these machines be slightly.
Yeah. And the 1 Series we saw a little bit less.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Okay. Now, when I did my 3720, which we'll have some clips of, I was seeing pretty much 8.5, which my specs are 8.6. So I was seeing right there.
You
so
can't deduce any closer
yeah,
than that.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
were right there
And
on
that's
spec.
a 2012 machine with 280 some hours on it. So yeah, interesting finds.
Now, there is an interesting point. This machine has 260 hours on it. This machine has 18. So
Yeah.
the pump on this one will be a little bit newer. The pump does wear gradually over time, but I don't know that
Yeah.
280 hours should be, or 260 hours should be
I
enough
wouldn't think so.
to
I
cause
wouldn't think
any
so.
notice. I'd hope not.
I'd be thinking thousands of hours before you'd see appreciable wear.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Ken, I almost forgot. We got to do the loader.
Right, we have to check the loader ports to see if we can get the
full flow.
The full flow at that loader
Yeah,
port.
I mean,
correct, yeah.
optimally, we will see the same readings that we saw back here on the Power Beyond,
Yep.
maybe less. Let's get to that. We're hooked to the loader down function. So when we push the loader lever forward or down, we can see the flow.
This is on the Kubota LX. All right, at idle, we're pretty much about 1 3/4 flow. Max RPM. We were right about 4.5 at max.
Okay, 4.5 at max throttle.
Yeah,
So,
with zero pressure, yeah.
so we're hooking up to the John Deere now, using the same approach we did on the LX3310.
Right, we're coming out of the loader ports, 1/4-inch couplers, into the valve, back to the tractor.
The only thing we changed here was we had to change the couplers to make them compatible with the Deere. They use a different coupler in there. Other than that, we're ready to go. What do we have, Ken, at idle here? Looks like 2, right?
1.5, I would say.
Oh yeah, it doesn't quite get to 2. Maybe 1 3/4, I don't know. Okay, here we go, full throttle. The exhaust is gonna come right towards you, Ken, so.
Got it. Almost exactly 5. Maybe just a hair under 5.
So we saw 5 GPM here,
Yes.
and that's the same we saw at the Power Beyond.
Yeah. Maybe it was just a hair under 5 on here. It's hard to, it's
Essentially
hard to
the same thing we saw on the LX3310,
Yeah,
meaning
yeah.
we didn't see any reduction to speak of between
Right.
Power Beyond and the loader
Right.
valves.
I agree.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, so this tractor has single point coupler on it, and it has an Artillian diverter and 1/4-inch hoses that run up to Artillian's divider block for their dual grapple. So I think we should very simply unhook from there and plug in up front and see if we can get 5 gallons a minute through all of that.
Yeah, I think this will be testing the diverter and the single point all in one
How
test.
much restriction we're adding to the system.
Okay, so I decided to set up here for this one because I have to push the button and hold it. So this is a diverter solution. Only 2 functions come from the tractor to the loader. We have this switch, essentially, that controls whether the flow goes to the tilt and curl or whether it goes to the grapple clamp or release. And in order to use the clamp or release function, the 3rd function, the diverted function, I have to hold this button down, run the lever either way, just like I would do for tilt and curl, except I'm holding the button. That is the switch. It literally is an electric switch.
Right, it diverts the fluid from here to here. So it's either or, not and.
What are you seeing at idle?
Okay, right now we're seeing just under 2 gallons a minute. And interesting to note, we're also seeing a little bit of pressure. We're seeing more parasitic pressure now in the system. About 200 pounds of parasitic pressure. We did not see that before. That means the loading valve is open all the way. There's no restriction from this. So that's just the restriction of the fluid flowing through all the 1/4-inch couplers and the extra fittings. So go ahead, full throttle. See our pressure's going up too, which is very interesting. And our flow is exactly 4 gallons a minute. So we've lost about 1 gallon of flow.
Ken, is that handle actually going to hold you up? The guy who sells those, he claims they're pretty reliable.
I know. Yeah, I'm not pulling on it hard just in case.
Folks, you can get the handle for your loader at boltonhooks.com. And I really appreciate it, Ken, for working with us all these
You're
years.
welcome. They're very helpful, yeah. And you can see that they're pretty strong.
Coupon code TTWT gets you 5% discount. That'll save you enough for lunch, maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, so what did we see here? We saw some lower flow.
We saw a little bit lower flow, and we saw what we would call parasitic pressure, which is we had their loading valve completely opened, so we weren't adding any pressure to the system, or we weren't loading the system, we weren't restricting the flow with that loading valve, but we saw pressure built up like we were. And that is from the pump is pushing the fluid through all these fittings, through the single point, through the Artillian diverter, through these 1/4-inch fittings. And with all these extra fittings, these smaller fittings, 1/4-inch couplers, there's pressure there. So we're seeing pressure in the system that was surprising. We didn't see that in any of the other testing that we did.
So in practicality, that might, the lower flow might slow it down a little bit.
Yes.
On a grapple clamp, that's
Yes.
not going to be a problem.
That's actually advantageous. That's
The
why you would add a
parasitic
restrictor.
pressure is going to lessen our usable amount of pressure.
Yeah, but on a grapple, let's say, you're going to clamp your load. It's going to go up against relief because you're going to clamp it as tight as you can, and then you're going to let off, and then the valve, because the valve closes, is going to hold that pressure there. So I don't think you're going to get any less work out of it. I mean,
so you think you'll still get all that pressure? The parasitic pressure won't be...
I mean, you certainly demonstrated in your videos moving trees and stuff like that.
We get a good hard clamp.
Or a rock, you can get a hard clamp and hold it. I mean, it's not like you're working to keep that.
That's right.
To keep the stump or the whatever you're grappling in the thing. It holds it. So it's just a fact when you have all these restrictions in the system.
You're going to add some load to the system
Right.
with every elbow, with every
Right.
fitting that you put in.
Yes, exactly.
I think we've seen that neither machine quite meets up to its specs
Right.
on flow. Both of them less by about the same numerical amount, by like 3 or 4 tenths of a gallon per minute.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
That might be a little bit different percentage because this one doesn't have quite as high a flow. Flow is not going to probably matter if we're just using the loader, because we probably won't notice that amount of difference.
Right, I agree.
I think it would matter if we could run hydraulic motors. I think we
Right.
could be yes or no on a hydraulic motor,
Yeah.
but I don't know of many hydraulic motor attachments that can actually run on less than 5.
No, the only ones that I've seen people use is they've added a hydraulic motor to turn a chute on a snowblower, and very low RPM,
Very low stress.
very
too.
low stress,
Very low load.
turning the chute. Even rear snowblowers, a lot of the 3-point snowblowers that people buy, there's optionally a chute rotation.
Yeah.
That's a motor, and it's just so low speed because of the way the motor's designed and the gear train that it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
And this points out one of my disappointments with compact tractors in general. Doesn't matter which brand.
Yes, absolutely.
I really would like to see more hydraulic flow.
Yes. We're, these manufacturers, it's all about horsepower. We have so many horsepower in a chassis. We can, get 0.5 more horsepower in this chassis and all this. But in reality, what does the work on these machines is hydraulics. You can have all the horsepower in the world. If you have a very poorly designed or poorly spec'd hydraulic system, you're not going to get any work done.
Yeah, I mean, they've optimized these machines for what they think is needed.
Right.
And I think they're probably really well balanced in general.
Right.
The loader speeds are okay and everything.
Yeah.
But we're wanting to get to running some of these hydraulic motors.
Yeah, the aftermarket is building the accessories now with all the different grapples on the market and the 3-point loader blades. The hydraulically operated snowplow blades have become so popular. And
then we've got the Limbsaw.
Yeah, the Limbsaw is a perfect example. 7 gallons a minute is not too much to ask for.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a high flow circuit on a skid steer and we're trying to run a mulching head. For those that don't know what that is, that's just a huge, gigantic machine that eats limbs.
Yeah. If we had 10 gallons per minute usable, we would transform what we could do with these tractors. It would really make a difference.
And the marketing behind that, for people that were actually looking at numbers to buy a machine, the marketing in that, it would be a, I don't know.
But even your 3R or 3720, which is the predecessor to 3R, is still not 10 gallons per minute.
No, 8.6 is what it's rated at.
So,
yeah.
Folks, I hope you found this interesting. I think we've learned a few items, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Ken, I've really enjoyed having you here.
Well, I've enjoyed being here so far.
Boltonhooks.com. Use code TTWT. He's got all kinds of accessories for both of these colored tractors and even other colored tractors. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Sorry, I'm zoning out. Let's do that again.
No, there's no.
I was asleep at the wheel.
do-overs.
I was asleep at the wheel. Sorry.
Hey, Ken.
Yes, Tim.
When we do, got your britches just right, Coach?
Sorry. I'm just starting to, it's just humid and I'm starting to get,
Loosen up a little.
yeah.